Life is a pretty crazy ride, isn't it? Like when you think about your life, like what are we all doing here? And where's this all going? And how do I choose what really matters and pour my life into that and avoid things that really aren't important and not make the foolish mistake of pouring my life into those things? Where is the good life found? What is going on? Now, here's the thing. I have met people, I know people who are quite confident they have the answers to all those questions. And they're more than glad to share them. And I think the reason that they feel that confidence is they feel very confident that they are seeing reality as it actually is. But listen to the warning that comes across the ages to us from Blaise Pascal. He says, "Know then, proud man, what a paradox you are to yourself. Be humble, impotent reason. Be silent, feeble nature. Learn that man infinitely transcends man. Hear from your master your true condition, which is unknown to you. Man transcends man. In other words, what you are exceeds your capacity to perceive it. There are parts of you that are hidden from you. Your true condition, my true condition, is not obvious." And here's the part I want you to get, and I've really been thinking about this for myself this week. If what I am transcends my perception of myself, then certainly all the people in my life transcend my perception of them. So who is it, this master who truly sees our true condition? Who is this one who Pascal thinks can explain us to ourselves? God himself, the maker of heaven and earth. So this morning, I want to show you, especially if you're new to the faith, I hope this will be helpful. And if you've been a Christian for a while, I hope this will be a great reminder. I want to show you foundational scriptures from God that explain what our true condition is. The first one is Psalm 139, verse 14, where the ancient thinker cries out, "I will give thanks to you, O God, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made." And so the first reality of our true condition is there really is a maker of heaven and earth. He made me. I am his creature. He is the creator. And this existence I have is unbelievable. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. In other words, he's saying man transcends man. I'm so fearfully made. I'm so wonderfully made. I can't even conceive the whole thing. So the first important foundation is God is good. God created the world good, and life is a gift. And that is true. But we all know there's more to the story than that, right? There's so much sorrow and hate and discord too. And so another psalm, Psalm 114, verse 3 says, "They have all turned aside. Together they have become corrupt." Who's the they? Every one of us. All of humanity. Every one of us has turned aside. All of us have become corrupt. Jeremiah 17:9 says, "The heart is more deceitful than all else, and it's desperately sick. Who can understand it?" Whose heart? All of our hearts. Who can understand it? Man transcends man. And so the scriptures declare first that God created us. He created us good. Every person is of incredible worth. And that original goodness has been bent. It's been twisted. It's been corrupted. There's a broken part in each of us. We all have bent hearts. Now, if both of those things are true, that I transcend myself, I can't even comprehend all of who I am, and my way of seeing life is also distorted. If both those things are true, then certainly that explains Proverbs chapter 20, verse 5. The purposes of a man's heart are deep waters. Isn't that so true? Like, the more you pay attention to yourself, it's like I'm on the surface and there's stuff happening deep beneath. Like, I don't even understand it. Sometimes I do things I don't know why I did them. Sometimes I have emotions or feel things and I don't know why. Because my conscience is on the surface, but there's deep waters beneath and they're full of mystery. Now, think about this. If I know that's true for me, then it's certainly true for other people. Why would I think I see other people clearly? Why would I think I see other people's motives clearly when I don't even see my own motives all that clearly sometimes? And suddenly this starts to make sense. Like, life itself starts to make sense. It makes sense that relationships are confusing, and sometimes the people closest to us drive us crazy because there's all kinds of stuff going on. And so the topic for the message today is why we drive each other crazy, but not just that. We're going to talk about something that can actually help us with it. Because listen how the verse ends. It says, the purposes of a man's heart are deep waters, but a man, a woman of understanding draws them out. Which means there is approaches we can take to begin to plumb those depths and actually begin to understand a little. So how do we begin to understand other people and improve our relationships? Well, listen to 1 Corinthians, where Paul says something that maybe you never thought about it the way he put it. In 1 Corinthians 7, verse 7, he says, I wish that all men were even as I am myself. However, each man has his own gift from God, one in this manner and another in that. So we have to begin where? With something really obvious. What I'm about to say is really obvious, but I swear we forget it almost every time we look at someone and start talking to them. And it's simply this: all people are not like me. They have their own gifts, and I don't have those gifts. I have gifts that they don't have. They have their own way of doing things that is different from mine. Proverbs 21:2 says, every man's way is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. And that second part tells us there is a real reality, but all of us are looking at it and thinking we're seeing it correctly. So each of us is thinking our way is the right way. So just like Paul, I wish everyone else thought the same way I did. I thought everyone else would agree with my brilliant insights into the world. But they don't. They have a different way of looking at things. So then, if that's reality, and I think that rings pretty true to most of us, how do I have a flourishing relationship with people who are so different from me? Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand and then to be understood. And of course, that's the exact opposite of our human nature, right? Like, what's our natural nature? I think most of us seek first to be understood, and then we presume we understand what the other person is thinking and what motivates them when we really don't. How much of the troubles in our life are due to the fact that we presume to understand the motives of other people when we really don't understand them? So if the other people in the world around me process it so differently than me, how do I begin to understand what it's like to be them, to be in their head, to walk in their shoes, and to understand a little bit of what motivates them and what matters to them? Well, it turns out there is a tool that can help us with that, and it's called the Enneagram. Some of you know this much better than I do. A lot of you are aware of this because we actually went over this as a church just before the pandemic. The Enneagram says there are basically 9 personality types, and everybody you know kind of pretty much fits into one of them. Each personality type tends to particular gifts and talents, needs and desires, fears and temptations. None of these personality types is better or worse than any of the others. They're just 9 different glasses. So there's reality, and each of us puts on different glasses, and so we see it in slightly different ways. When you try and think about someone and go, what Enneagram are they? It's not that you have the right to put them in a box, and you shouldn't even try to put them in a box. It doesn't give you the final word on them. It gives you the first word. It's not a stereotype. It's an archetype. In other words, it's an introduction. It's a rough sketch that gives you some idea of where they're coming from. In other words, it gets you into the ballpark. If you pay attention, let's say you're talking to someone for a while and it's like, man, this isn't working. And then you realize, oh, they speak Portuguese. Oh, I get why this isn't working. Now, if you just keep speaking English to them, what's going to happen? You're both going to get really frustrated. And that's what we do. The Enneagram helps you translate and interpret what someone else is trying to say. So it's not the scriptures. It's not perfect science. It's a tool that can begin to help us imagine what it's like to be in someone else's head, what it's like to walk in their shoes. And that is such a vast improvement. Even if you get one little bit of insight, it's such a vast improvement over what we normally do, which is this. We assume we see reality when all we see is the surface. And we assume we understand other people's motives when they're actually running their lives on a totally different rule book than we are. So our church did take a deep dive on the Enneagram, as I said. There's actually on our website a podcast on each of these 9 personality types. There's a test you can take. There's all kinds of resources there, so you can use the QR code. You can go to leverington.org. And those of you online, there's a link in the YouTube this morning that you can take to see those resources. And the reason we're doing that is over these next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about all our relationships. Your relationship with your parents, your relationship with your children, your relationship with your friends, your relationship with your coworkers. So I want to have this as a background that you can use as a tool as you work on all of those. But today, I want you to think about only one. I want you to think about one relationship, and here's the one I want you to think about. It's somebody who's driving you crazy. Okay, I want you to think it could be your parent, could be a child, could be your spouse, a coworker, a friend, a neighbor, someone who kind of drives you crazy, like your relationship isn't what you wished it was. Now, I'm not talking about the person that you view as evil incarnate, right? Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about someone where you wish the relationship was better. So just take a moment. Who is that? Okay, so now we're going to do some hard work. And I realize this is going to feel more like a class than a sermon, but there's a reason for this. I want us to just go to church and go through the motions and hear some encouraging speech. I want us to actually work on our relationships so that at the end of this series, we can all look back and go, you know what? A couple of my relationships, they're in a better place now. So what's going to happen now is I am going to give you a summary of all 9 of these personality types, and I want you to think of 2 things. 1, which one of these best covers you? Which one best describes you? And 2, which one of these personality types is the person you just named? Okay, it's gonna be hard, but I want you to work, think, see what you get. Here we go. The first personality type is known as the perfectionist. Perfectionists feel a compulsive need to improve the world around them. They're ethical, dedicated, and reliable. They are motivated by a desire to live the right way and to avoid fault and blame. They internalize anger, which often bubbles up as smoldering resentment when others don't live up to their impossibly high standards. But don't think they let themselves off the hook. Perfectionists live with a constant awareness of their own inner critic, reminding them of all the ways that they have failed. At their best, they have an amazing ability to see potential improvement in everything around them, and they also take the action to bring that vision to fruition. At their worst, they can be overly critical of themselves and others, leaving everyone feeling as if they don't measure up. So remember what we've said. There's a span to you from your worst nature to your best nature. All these personality types have a really positive side, and they have an underbelly. They have a shadow. So this is true of all of them. The next personality type is called the helper. Helpers are motivated by the need to feel indispensable to those they love, which leads them to direct all their energy toward meeting the needs of others, whether they've asked for help or not. Warm and caring, they have many relationships and are always giving to others while carefully avoiding the acknowledgement of their own needs. Helpers focus outwardly on the feelings of others and secretly believe that they know what is best for everyone else. At their best, helpers can sense exactly what others need and are generous in meeting those needs. At their worst, they sidestep healthy boundaries and give too much to others, ending up feeling spent or taken for granted. The third personality type is the performer. Performers are success-oriented and wired for productivity, motivated by a need to be, or to appear to be, successful and to avoid failure. Image conscious to a fault, they easily abandon their true selves in favor of projecting a false, crowd-pleasing image. They can shape-shift in different contexts to become the best version of themselves for their audience. At their best, performers are driven to accomplish the goals they set and are enthusiastic in sharing strategic advice and taking on any role a situation calls for. At their worst, they become chameleons and focus so much on goals that they fail to pay attention to the feelings and the contributions of others. The fourth personality type is the romantic. Romantics are motivated by a need to be special, understood, and to experience their oversized feelings. Driven by emotions, they focus inwardly on their own deep feelings. Never wanting to be seen as ordinary, romantics are often creative, sensitive, and moody, and they aren't afraid to sit for a while in the depths of sadness or nostalgia. They believe they are missing something essential that keeps them from being complete, and they envy the apparent wholeness and happiness they see in others. Yet above all else, they must be true to themselves. So the thought of acting like everyone else in order to fit in is unthinkable. At their best, romantics engage life with fullness and authenticity, able to bear witness to pain without feeling the need to fix it. At their worst, they misunderstand others and pull away from them, over-identifying with their feelings of sadness with an overbearing intensity. The fifth personality type is the investigator. Investigators are motivated by a need to gain knowledge, conserve energy, and avoid relying on others. Analytical, detached, and private, they collect knowledge and hoard information in order to be as independent and self-sustaining as possible. This withholding and self-sufficient attitude can often unwittingly lead to holding back love and affection from others. They relate to the world through the mind. At their best, investigators are self-sufficient and great listeners, capable of true neutrality and measured logical thought. At their worst, they are bad at opening up with others and find it hard to get on board with things that they do not have interest in, which can make relationships feel one-sided to others. The sixth personality type is the loyalist. Loyalists are committed, practical, and witty, motivated by fear and the need for security. Forever imagining worst-case scenarios and questioning their own ability to handle life, sixes yearn for support and security above all else. They will often turn to authority figures and belief systems to find that security, which is why they function so well as the glue that holds our social systems together. At their best, the loyalist is steadfast and loyal, holding communities together with the concern for the common good. At their worst, they struggle to trust both themselves and others, often causing anxiety that is problematic in relationships. The seventh personality type is the enthusiast. Enthusiasts are motivated by a need to be happy and to avoid pain. Fun, spontaneous, and adventurous, they gorge themselves on positive experiences and love to plan and to anticipate new adventures. Never satisfied, enthusiasts bounce from activity to activity or person to person in a frenzied pursuit to distract themselves from pain and unpleasantness. At their best, Enthusiasts add joy to relationships and bring optimism wherever they go, solving problems with a natural outpouring of creative energy. But at their worst, their fear of being trapped in pain or a boring routine make it hard for them to settle down, focus, or honestly address problems. The eighth personality type is the challenger. Challengers are motivated by a need to be strong and avoid feeling weak or vulnerable. Fueled by intensity, they are domineering and confrontational, unafraid to speak their mind, and they expect you to do the same. They externalize their anger, naturally exuding strength and projecting an intimidating exterior to mask vulnerability. Expressing true emotions can feel like weakness to them. At their best, though, challengers are dynamic, confident leaders who are unafraid to challenge authority, and they act as champions for the underdog. At their worst, they struggle to understand that vulnerability is not weakness, and they're often unaware of the dominating ways others experience them in relationships. Finally, the ninth personality type is the peacemaker. Peacemakers are motivated by a need to keep the peace, to merge with others, and to avoid conflict. They're pleasant, laid back, accommodating. They live by a code of ignorance is bliss when it comes to avoiding negative feelings which might lead to confrontation with others or acknowledging hard truths about themselves. They tend to forget or ignore their anger completely. This spiritual, emotional laziness manifests in falling asleep to their own priorities, their own opinions, and personal development. But at their best, the peacemaker is a natural mediator, seeing two sides to every story and acting out of a true desire to restore peace and harmony without controlling others. At their worst, they have a hard time being sure of themselves and making tough decisions, tending to merge their agenda with others in an attempt to avoid healthy conflict. Okay, that's a lot, but those are the 9 personality types. And so first, I want to ask you 2 questions. Can you guess which one is you? If you're not sure, you can get a free online test. You can go to our website, other websites, there are online tests to help you. And here's the thing, if you're not sure about that other person, here's what I'd like to suggest. This afternoon, watch this service again. Those of you online, just go move the YouTube back and watch that section again and ask yourself, if I had to choose which was them at their best and them at their worst, which of those combinations of at their best and at their worst best fits that person? I think if you figured that out, you'll know their type. And then when you know that, you go back and you look at what is their greatest need, what motivates them, what are they afraid of? Could that help you have empathy for someone? Could that help you begin to have a sense of, oh, that's what motivates them, that's what matters, that's what's driving them? And could that help you to get a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be living in their head, walking in their shoes? So each of these 9 personality types has different core needs, desires, and fears. 9 different perspectives about what's most important in life and what's most interesting in life. If I'm dealing with someone who is different from me in all those ways, and here's the main thought of this morning. If that's true, wouldn't it make sense that we would misinterpret each other? Wouldn't it make sense that we'd misunderstand each other? That we would frustrate each other? Wouldn't it make sense that we would both think that the other person is missing the big picture? That the other person isn't seeing what's really important? That the other person lacks the kind of empathy that they should have? That the other person, their priorities are all messed up? So, if I accept this premise that other people really are experiencing the world so differently than me, then what should I do? How should I react? How should I treat them? Here's what the scriptures teach us in Colossians chapter 3. So, because we're dealing with all this craziness, as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, who's talking to? He's talking to every one of you who has bent your knee to Jesus. If you've asked Jesus into your heart as your Lord and Savior, this is you. And who are you? You are chosen by God. You are holy. You are beloved. Even if you don't feel it, that's who you really are. If that's who you are, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Notice that phrase, put on. In other words, it doesn't come naturally. It's going to be hard. It's going to take work, especially with someone who drives you crazy. To be compassionate and kind and humble and gentle and patient, you need to put it on like putting on a coat. I'm putting on the ways of Christ. I'm going to live and treat this person as Jesus would have me do. Bearing with one another. Now, why does, in the Bible, he's talking to Christians, so why is he saying they need to bear with each other? Because people are annoying. People are really annoying. People in your family are annoying. People at work are annoying. And other Christians are annoying. Amen, brother. And here's where it really comes around and bites you in the butt. The implication is you're far more annoying to some people than you know. I am far more annoying to some people than I even perceive. If that won't humble us. And that's the truth. Now, look at all those instructions up there, right? This is the way of Jesus, Colossians chapter 3. Frankly, that seems like a lot of work and effort to me, especially now. In this post-pandemic era, I think a lot of us have pulled back. We're less willing to commit ourselves to groups, less willing to commit ourselves to gatherings, and we're less willing to commit ourselves to people outside our inner circle. And even in those inner circles, many of our relationships, we're kind of treading water. Many of those relationships have grown threadbare. A lot of us we're pulling back. We're just becoming less involved to our detriment. To live the Colossians 3 way requires self-sacrifice and effort, not listening to your worst angels, but listening to your best angels, and especially listening to the Spirit of God. So I'm asking a very pragmatic question. I'm a number 5. We're very pragmatic. Is this really worth the effort? Is it really worth the effort to live this way? Well, listen to what Proverbs 11 says. Proverbs 11, 24 to 25. One man gives freely and gains even more. Another withholds unduly but comes to poverty. A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. Now remember, Proverbs are not promises, they're principles, but I believe this principle is true. This is true. The more we pull back from relationships, the less engaged we become, the less we're willing to put out for people, the less we're willing to invest, the more empty we will become. Healthy relationships are inconvenient. And my phone app and my social media and my entertainment and the game that's on will always be more convenient than the messiness of a real relationship. There will always come a time when we have to choose between a relationship and something else. Have you ever had those moments where the Spirit of God quickens you and you're like, oh, there's a choice to be made right now. And really, these go 2 different ways. And I need to put this down and I need to spend time with this person. But here's the beautiful part. If you will refresh others, you yourself will be refreshed. So, how much effort do you put into refreshing others these days? Or are you so driven by your agenda or your worries or your desires or your fears that your focus is always on how you're doing, not how others are doing, how you're being treated, not how others are being treated? Or am I saying seek first to understand and then worry about being understood? And here's the beautiful part, you guys. Often when I hear the word generosity, I think about stuff, like giving people stuff or giving people money. But what if generosity of our time, our goodwill, our attention, our encouragement, that's what delights God. That's what God sees as generous. What if being generous is withholding judgment, being curious about the other person, taking a real interest in them? What if that's the generosity we're talking about? We can't have meaningful relationships without generosity. That's the deal. So, with the person you were thinking about this morning, what is one thing you could do to refresh them? And then if you knew their Enneagram and you went back and thought about that, then ask that question again. What would it mean to refresh them in a way that they would want to be refreshed? And if you got that idea, would you do it? Amen. Thanks for joining us today as we strive to think carefully about our faith. You can help keep this ministry on the air by making a donation at leverington.org. For now, may the Lord bless you and keep you. We'll see you next time.